Dawn broke in thin silver light across the empty suburban street when the police dog suddenly froze. Its paw hovered mid-step, muscles tight, eyes locked ahead. Officer Daniel Hart felt the leash pull hard in his hand. "What is it, Rex?" he murmured, scanning the quiet block. Then he saw him. A small boy standing barefoot near the bus stop, still as stone. The child's eyes looked hollow, his lips trembling, skin pale beneath the early chill. Without a sound, the boy lifted one hand and made a strange, deliberate gesture. Daniel's heartbeat slowed. He had seen that gesture once before, in a training video for officers, the silent distress signal used by victims who couldn't speak. His breath caught. He moved carefully, lowering his tone. "Hey, buddy, you okay? Are you hurt?" The boy didn't answer. His clothes were torn, dirt smudged across his knees, and the faint outline of bruises darkened his small wrists. He took a single step back, eyes darting toward the end of the street. Rex whined softly, tail stiff, every instinct screaming danger. Daniel tried again, gentler. "It's all right. You're safe now. What's your name?" "Nothing." The boy's fingers trembled as he repeated the same hand motion, thumb tucked across the palm, fingers closing over it. That unmistakable signal for help. A chill crawled up Daniel's spine. "Someone hurt you?" he asked. The boy's lips parted. A whisper barely slipped out. "Don't let him hear." Daniel blinked. "Who?" The boy's eyes flicked past him, toward the corner of the street. There, half hidden behind a row of hedges, a black SUV idled silently. Tinted windows, engine humming low. Daniel's gut twisted. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Possible child in danger. Corner of Willow and Pine." Before he could finish, the SUV's headlights flared to life. The engine roared, tires squealing against asphalt as it tore down the road. Rex lunged, barking ferociously. Daniel steadied him, eyes following the retreating vehicle. "Did you see who was inside?" he asked quickly, turning back. But the boy had backed up against the bus bench, breathing fast, eyes wet with terror. Daniel crouched down to eye level, voice low but firm. "You're safe now. Whoever that was, he can't hurt you while I'm here. I promise." The boy shook his head, words trembling out like broken glass. "He hears everything, even when he's not here." Something in the child's tone made Daniel's skin crawl. He glanced around. The neat lawns, the empty porches, the whisper of wind through the trees, and felt a strange wrongness in the air. The neighborhood was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Rex tugged the leash again, nose pointing toward the narrow path leading behind the houses into the woods. "Easy, boy." Daniel pressed the radio button again, forcing calm. "Dispatch, I need backup. Possible abduction in progress. Suspect vehicle black SUV, tinted windows, no plates," static crackled back. "Copy, Unit 12. Backup en route." He looked at the boy again. "Do you know who that man is? Was he following you?" The boy didn't answer. He stared at the woods instead, eyes wide, haunted. Daniel followed his gaze. The first rays of sun had just touched the treetops, but deep inside, the shadows stayed black and heavy. "Rex," Daniel muttered. "Hold." But the dog wouldn't hold. He growled low, pulled free, and sprinted toward the tree line, barking in short, urgent bursts. "Rex! Heel!" Daniel shouted, chasing after him. The boy took a hesitant step forward. "He'll find it," he whispered, voice almost lost in the morning breeze. Daniel stopped mid-stride. "Find what?" But the boy only stared into the woods, tears welling, the silent hand signal forming one last time before his arm dropped to his side. Daniel's pulse thundered. The radio crackled again, distant voices asking for coordinates, but he barely heard them. All he could focus on was the sound ahead, Rex's barking turning frantic, echoing between the trees like an alarm. He sprinted toward it, branches whipping his face, the cold air biting his lungs. Somewhere behind him, the boy's small voice carried through the wind. "Don't let him find me." Daniel's flashlight beam cut through the dark pines as he ran deeper. The dog's barking suddenly stopped. Silence crashed down, thick and heavy. "Rex?" No response. Only the rustle of leaves and the thud of his own heartbeat. Then, from somewhere ahead, a low growl and the sharp sound of claws scraping against dirt. Daniel's breath caught. Whatever the dog had found, it wasn't just a scent trail. He gripped his flashlight tighter, stepping forward slowly. The beam trembled across the forest floor until it caught on something half buried beneath the leaves. Rex stood beside it, motionless, his ears flat, eyes locked on the ground. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "What did you find, boy?" The wind answered with a hollow sigh, scattering dust from the mound of soil. And then he saw it. Just enough of a shape to send a chill through his chest. He lifted his radio, voice tight. "Dispatch! I think we've got something out here." The transmission hissed with static as the morning light dimmed behind the clouds, swallowing the last bit of warmth from the street he'd left behind. Daniel looked once more toward the silent bus stop, now empty. The boy was gone, and deep in the woods, Rex began to dig. Rex's paws tore at the soil, claws raking through wet leaves until the metallic scent of earth filled the air. His growls turned sharp, desperate. Officer Daniel Hart dropped to his knees beside him, pushing the dog gently aside. "What is it, boy?" The dirt was loose, recently disturbed. Daniel dug with bare hands, his fingers cutting against roots and stones until something rough brushed his skin. Fabric. He pulled harder, uncovering a small backpack, caked with mud and half buried under the leaves. He brushed the dirt off and saw faded cartoon patches on the front. The zipper was jammed. He forced it open. Inside were crushed crayons, a broken hair clip, and a school ID card smeared with dirt. The name read, Lily Marson, age 7. Daniel frowned. That wasn't the boy's name. His mind raced. Another child? Behind him, the bushes rustled softly. He turned. The boy had followed him into the woods, his bare feet sinking into the cold mud. His eyes locked on the backpack, and something inside him seemed to break. "She didn't come back," the boy whispered. His voice cracked like thin glass. Daniel stood slowly. "Who, son? Who didn't come back?" The boy's gaze stayed fixed on the backpack. "Lily, he took her first." Daniel's stomach tightened. "The man in the car?" The boy nodded once, a stiff, fearful motion. "He said he'd bring her back if we were good." His words trembled. "But she didn't come back." Rex sniffed around the disturbed ground again, nose pressing deeper. The dog whimpered, then started digging at another spot nearby. Daniel's voice rose. "Rex, stop! Wait!" But the dog kept going, dirt flying until a tiny shoe rolled free, caked with mud, pink laces tangled and broken. Daniel froze. The boy's breathing turned shallow. Panicked, Daniel knelt in front of him, speaking softly. "Listen to me. You're safe now, okay? We'll find her. I promise you that." The boy shook his head violently. "No, no, no. If he knows you're here, he'll come back." "Who will?" Daniel pressed. The boy glanced toward the shadows behind the trees. "The man in the big car. He watches at night." "He hears everything." Rex growled again, facing the direction the boy pointed. A stretch of woods leading toward a narrow service road. Daniel felt the air shift. The morning silence had turned heavy, oppressive. Every rustle felt like movement. Every shadow seemed to breathe. He lifted his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need a forensic unit at my coordinates. Possible evidence site, child abduction, maybe worse. Copy, Unit 12. Team en route, ETA 20 minutes. Daniel exhaled slowly. He turned back to the boy. "They're sending help. You don't have to be scared anymore." The boy didn't look convinced. "You don't understand," he whispered. "He'll be angry, I told." Daniel crouched, steadying his voice. "No one's going to hurt you again. You did the right thing." But the boy's gaze flicked past Daniel's shoulder again. His pupils widened in terror. Daniel spun around, nothing but trees and mist. Still, his instincts screamed danger. He turned back to calm the boy, but the child had backed up several steps. "I have to go," he murmured. "Wait. No, it's not safe." Daniel reached for him, but the boy stepped away faster, retreating toward the clearing. "Please," Daniel said, desperate now. "Just stay with me. You can tell me where Lily is. We'll protect you." Tears rolled down the boy's face. "You can't protect anyone from him." The forest swallowed his voice. Daniel moved forward, hand out, but Rex suddenly barked again. Loud, warning, snapping Daniel's attention for just a second. When he looked back, the boy was gone. "Kid!" Daniel called, spinning, eyes scanning between the trunks. "Hey, come back!" No answer. Only the sound of the wind stirring the leaves. Daniel ran toward the edge of the clearing, heart pounding. He searched behind fallen logs, under thick brush, down the path toward the road. Nothing. The boy had vanished as if the woods had swallowed him whole. Rex circled, whining low. Daniel knelt, gripping the dog's collar. "Track him!" "Find the boy!" The dog sniffed, nose sweeping the air, but then let out a confused whimper. The scent trail ended right where the boy had been standing. Daniel's radio buzzed faintly. "Unit 12, status check?" He swallowed hard, voice flat. "Still at scene. Evidence found. Child missing again." Static hissed, the dispatcher repeating his call, but Daniel barely listened. He looked down, something small caught in the mud near his boot. A folded paper, damp but still intact. He picked it up carefully, peeling back the edges. It was a child's drawing, crayon marks faded but clear enough to see. A stick figure boy, a big brown dog beside him, both facing a dark house with barred windows. Inside the house was a crying girl drawn in blue crayon tears. Above it, in a shaky hand, one word was written. "Home." Daniel's throat tightened. He stared at the drawing for a long moment, the air cold against the back of his neck. Somewhere in the woods, a crow called. A single sharp cry that cut through the stillness. He folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his pocket, eyes narrowing toward the distant service road. Whatever this was, it wasn't just one missing child. It was something deeper, darker, and now, the boy who knew the truth had vanished again. Daniel rose slowly, Rex at his side, both staring into the thickening mist that swallowed the trees. "Let's go, boy," he murmured. "We're not done here," Rex barked once, sharp and low, before leading the way forward into the woods that suddenly didn't feel empty at all. Rain fell in steady sheets, blurring the edges of the empty fields as Daniel followed Rex along the muddy path. The dog's nose stayed low, pulling hard on the leash, driven by a scent Daniel couldn't see but trusted completely. Every few seconds, lightning lit the horizon, brief flashes revealing rows of dying crops and the outline of an old farmhouse at the edge of town. "That's where you're leading me, huh?" Daniel muttered, squinting through the rain. Rex barked once, sharp, confirming. The farmhouse looked forgotten. Windows cracked, paint peeling, the porch sagging under years of neglect. But through the storm's blur, Daniel saw something that froze him mid-step. A faint flicker of light in the basement window. "Someone's here," he whispered. Rex's body went rigid, ears forward, low growl rumbling from his chest. Daniel unholstered his gun, every sense alive. The place was supposed to be abandoned. It didn't feel that way. They moved slowly around to the back door. Rust ate at the hinges. The knob was slick with moisture. Daniel tested it. Locked. One hard shove, and the wood splintered open. Inside, the air was heavy and cold, filled with a smell of damp metal and something else. Something that made his stomach turn. Fear had a scent, and it lived here. The living room was a ruin. Old toys scattered across the floor. A doll missing an eye lay beside a broken crib. Furniture overturned, dust thick on everything except the footprints leading deeper inside. Rex sniffed one of the toy blocks, tail low. The letters spelled Lily. Daniel's throat tightened. "We're close." He moved carefully through the hall, light beam cutting through the dark. The floor creaked under every step. Somewhere below, water dripped steadily. The rhythm too even, too alive. Then he saw it. A padlocked basement door at the end of the hallway. The lock was new, shining against the rot. Rex began to growl again, hackles raised. Daniel holstered his weapon, grabbed his flashlight, and tried the handle. It didn't budge. He stepped back and slammed his shoulder against it. Once. Twice. The third hit splintered the wood. The padlock snapped loose and clattered down the stairs. The smell hit him first. Rust, mold, and something metallic that made his stomach twist. He aimed the flashlight down. The beam shook slightly as he descended the creaking steps. The basement was half flooded, water pooling in corners. But the walls stole his breath. Every inch was covered with children's drawings, taped and nailed in overlapping layers. Crayon faces, houses, stick figures of smiling families. But the further he looked, the darker they became. Black scribbles swallowed the smiles. The last few drawings were nothing but cages and red circles. Rex whined softly, pacing near the center of the room. Daniel followed the light beam to what he'd been circling. Chains, bolted into the concrete floor. The ends were frayed. The metal was stained dark. Daniel's voice broke into a whisper. "My God!" A small noise, like a whimper, echoed behind him. He turned fast, gun raised. "Who's there?" The flashlight caught movement. A shadow darting between the pillars. Rex barked, low and fierce. Then a small figure stepped into the light. The boy, wet, trembling, his eyes wide. "Hey!" Daniel lowered his weapon instantly. "It's okay, you're safe now. I've been looking for you." The boy didn't move. His bare feet left prints on the damp floor. His voice came out flat, almost dreamlike. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel took a cautious step forward. "You don't have to be afraid. He can't hurt you now." The boy's gaze flicked to the ceiling above them. "He's coming!" Lightning flashed outside, flooding the basement with white light for a heartbeat. In that instant, Daniel saw new details. Scratches on the walls, small handprints smeared in dirt near the chains. His pulse hammered in his ears. "Who's coming?" he asked. The boy's eyes filled with tears, his voice barely a whisper. "The man in the big car." Daniel grabbed his radio, whispering urgently, "Dispatch! I need immediate backup at the farmhouse on Miller's End." The signal broke into static. He tried again, louder. "Unit 12, requesting—" The radio died completely. Rex started barking again, furious, staring at the basement window. The light outside had changed. Headlights, bright and low, sweeping across the yard. Daniel snapped his flashlight off, plunging the room into darkness. He motioned for the boy to stay silent. Through the thin basement window, he saw the rain-slick reflection of a car door opening. The sound of its slamming cut through the thunder. Footsteps followed. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. Daniel crouched behind one of the support beams, gun drawn, heart racing. Rex stayed low beside him, silent now, eyes burning in the dark. The boy pressed against the far wall, shaking violently. A shadow passed in front of the window. Then another. Someone was walking along the side of the house, flashlight beams sweeping the ground. Daniel steadied his breath, finger tightening on the trigger. Whoever it was, they knew this place. They weren't just passing by. The basement door above creaked. The doorknob turned once, then stopped. Silence. Water dripped somewhere behind him. The boy's breathing hitched. Another lightning flash illuminated the small basement window, and a tall silhouette crossed in front of it, pausing just long enough to look down. Daniel's pulse froze. He couldn't tell if the figure saw them, but whoever stood out there wasn't a stranger. They knew exactly where to look. Rain hammered against the roof in a relentless rhythm. In the pitch-black basement, Daniel steadied his breathing, every muscle tensed. Above them, the floorboards creaked. Someone was inside the house. The boy's small frame shook beside an overturned table. Rex crouched low, lips curled in a silent snarl. Daniel motioned for them to stay still. A faint sound drifted down through the stairwell. Whistling. A slow, tuneless hum, calm in a way that made Daniel's skin crawl. Then came heavy footsteps, deliberate, measured. The man wasn't searching blindly. He was moving with familiarity, like someone who'd walked these halls 100 times. "All right, sweetheart," the man called in a low, mocking tone. "You left the door open again? You know I don't like surprises." The boy's eyes widened in terror. He shook his head frantically. Daniel crouched beside him, whispering barely above a breath. "That's him?" The boy nodded. The whistling stopped. A switch clicked. Faint light flickered through the cracks in the basement door. Daniel slid his hand slowly to his body cam, pressed the side button. The tiny red light blinked to life. He aimed it toward the stairs. Upstairs, the man was muttering, his words slurred with confidence. "The next shipment's delayed. Told them we can't move them all at once. Too risky with the cops sniffing around." Daniel's stomach twisted. Shipment. Kids. He leaned closer to the floor, listening hard. "But the boss wants 3 more before the week's out," the man continued, voice closer now. "He'll get his money. Always does." The boy buried his face in his hands, trembling. Daniel's pulse thundered. This was it. The break he'd been waiting for. He adjusted the cam slightly, keeping the voice recording clear. Then, clang. A metal can rolled out from the dark, hitting the basement step. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. The man's voice stopped instantly. Silence followed. Thick, suffocating. Then, "Who's there?" The voice was sharper now, cruel. A chair scraped. Boots hit the stairs. Daniel raised his gun, motioned the boy back. "Stay behind me." The first step creaked. The man appeared in the doorway, a crowbar in one hand, flashlight in the other. His build filled the frame. Broad shoulders, heavy jacket soaked from rain. Eyes wild and suspicious. "Come out," he hissed. "You think I don't see you down there?" Rex's low growl filled the silence. The man took another step down. "Dog, huh? Good boy. Come here, mutt." Another step. Daniel waited, heart pounding in sync with the creaking stairs. The man was only a few feet away now, flashlight beams slicing through the dark. Then, from the shadows, Rex lunged. The dog exploded forward with a snarl, slamming into the man's chest. The crowbar clattered down the steps. The flashlight spun out of his hand, rolling across the wet floor. "Get him, Rex!" Daniel shouted, rushing forward. The man screamed, struggling under the dog's weight. "Get off me! You!" Daniel kicked the crowbar away, forcing the man onto his stomach. He cuffed him in one swift motion, pressing a knee to his back. "Daniel Hart, Metro PD. You're under arrest," the man coughed, spitting mud and laughter in equal measure. "You got guts, cop. I'll give you that." Daniel tightened the cuffs. "Save it for court." The man turned his head slightly, smirking even as blood ran from a bite mark on his arm. "Court?" he rasped. "You think I'm the only one?" Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" The man chuckled, low and bitter. "Others will finish the job tonight. You can't stop all of us." The words sank like stones in Daniel's chest. He grabbed the man by the collar. Who are you working for? Where are the others? The man only smiled wider, teeth streaked with blood. You'll see soon enough, Rex barked, tense, sensing something still off. Daniel hauled the man upright, dragging him toward the wall. You're going to tell me everything, or I swear. Before he could finish, a shrill sound cut through the basement. A phone ringing. It came from the man's jacket pocket. Daniel yanked it out, holding it up. The screen showed an unknown number. The man's smirk vanished. Don't answer that, he hissed. Daniel pressed speaker. This is Officer Hart. Who is this? A distorted voice crackled through the line. Deep, robotic, almost calm. You have something of mine. Daniel's grip tightened. If you're talking about the boy, he's safe now. A pause. Then the voice replied, almost amused. Safe? You really think this is about one child? Daniel's stomach turned cold. What do you want? Static filled the silence for a moment. Then, bring the boy, the voice said, slow and deliberate. Or more will disappear. The line went dead. Daniel stared at the phone, the echo of that sentence still ringing in his head. The man on the floor started laughing again, low and broken. Rex barked sharply, sensing Daniel's surge of anger. Daniel turned toward the boy, pale, soaked, clutching his small backpack. His lips trembled as he whispered, They'll take them. All of them. Daniel looked down at the phone one last time, its screen now black. The reflection of his own face stared back at him, exhausted, furious, afraid. Outside, thunder rolled across the fields. The farmhouse felt smaller now, darker, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. Daniel clenched his jaw. Not if I find them first. The storm had passed, but the air outside the station still felt heavy, charged with something unseen. Daniel stood by the window, watching rainwater snake down the glass. His reflection stared back, weary and lined with questions he couldn't shake. Behind him, the boy sat on a narrow bench, hugging his knees. Rex lay close beside him, eyes half open, always alert. Then the desk phone rang. Daniel turned, hesitating. Only a handful of people knew this line. He picked it up. A soft click. Then a voice, low and distorted. You shouldn't have moved him. Daniel froze. The call wasn't routed through dispatch. It came straight in. He looked out the window again. The streetlights flickered. A dark sedan idled 2 blocks away. You can't hide what's mine, the voice continued, calm as ever. We see you, Officer Hart. The line went dead. Daniel's heart pounded. He stepped toward the boy. We're moving again. Now, the boy's face paled. They found us. Daniel didn't answer. He guided him through the back exit to an unmarked cruiser, Rex trotting close behind. As they drove, the streets glistened under streetlight reflections. The boy stared out the window, silent until they passed the woods. Then, almost whispering, You're taking me somewhere safe? Protective custody, Daniel said firmly. You'll stay there till this is over. The boy shook his head. No, you don't understand. The others, they're still there. Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened. You're just a kid. It's not your job to... But it's mine, the boy said suddenly, eyes glistening. They listened to me. The little ones. I told them to stay quiet. I told them to wait. Daniel's chest ached. The boy wasn't just a victim. He was a witness. Maybe even the only one left who knew what had really happened. He pulled the car over near the safe house, headlights dimmed. The safe house was an old motel unit repurposed for emergency protection. 2 rooms, 1 exit, monitored. He opened the back door. You'll be safe here, he repeated. The boy didn't move. His voice broke when he said, She didn't come back. I have to help them. Daniel crouched beside him. You did help. You led us this far. But I can't risk losing you too. Rex whined softly, sensing the tension. Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Stay here. I'll figure this out. He walked outside to take a breath. The night felt too still, too quiet. When he looked up, a light from a nearby rooftop flickered once, then twice. A signal. He turned to look at the street. The same black SUV from the first morning idled by the curb, headlights off. Daniel's blood ran cold. They weren't hiding anymore. They were hunting. He rushed back inside. "We're moving again," he ordered, snapping Rex's leash. "But no time!" Daniel barked. "They found us." They sped down the empty highway, city lights giving way to dark fields and abandoned warehouses. Daniel's mind raced. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching. They were close, maybe even tracking the car. He grabbed his phone and texted his partner, "Trace all incoming calls. The voice is local. Possible tech triangulation." Then he tossed the phone onto the seat and tightened his grip on the wheel. Rex started whining again, nose pressed to the window. Daniel's heart sank. "You smell them, don't you?" The boy looked up, wide-eyed. "They're following us?" "Not for long," Daniel muttered. "We'll turn the tables." He made a sharp detour into the old industrial district, a maze of crumbling warehouses and rusting fences. "Perfect for an ambush." "Okay," Daniel said, cutting the headlights. "We wait. If they come closer, I'll lead them away." The boy frowned. "You're using yourself as bait?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Comes with the badge." The boy stared at him, then whispered, "You're different from them." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but I'm not good enough until they're all safe." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy, but strangely calm. Then Daniel turned toward Rex. "You ready, partner?" The dog wagged his tail once, then went still again, ears pricked toward the darkness outside. A distant sound broke the quiet. Tires screeching. A vehicle approaching fast. Daniel reached for his gun. "Stay low." The boy nodded. Daniel glanced in the mirror to check the road. Just 1 second, then looked back to reassure the boy. But the seat was empty. "Ethan?" Daniel's voice cracked. Rex was gone too. Daniel flung open the door, scanning the shadows. Nothing. Just the wind whistling through hollow buildings. Then, faintly, a bark. Rex's bark. Distant. Urgent. Daniel turned toward the sound. It came from deeper in the warehouse district. He grabbed his flashlight, heart hammering. "No, no, no!" He sprinted into the dark, boots splashing through puddles. The barking grew louder, frantic, echoing between the concrete walls. Then, silence. Daniel stopped, chest heaving, staring into the maze of warehouses ahead. A single flicker of light blinked from one of the far buildings. Just like before. A signal. He raised his gun, whispering into the radio, "Dispatch! Officer downrange." Possible kidnapping in progress. Static. No reply. The night swallowed his voice whole. Somewhere ahead, Rex barked again. A desperate cry this time. Daniel ran toward it, fear burning through every step. The last thing he saw before the darkness closed in was a flash of red light. The taillights of the black SUV, vanishing behind the warehouse gates. Daniel burst through the rusted gate of the warehouse yard, the beam of his flashlight slicing through thick fog and swirling dust. The sound of Rex's barking echoed faintly, bouncing off steel walls like a desperate alarm. "Rex!" he shouted, voice cracking. Only the echo answered. The old complex loomed ahead. Broken windows, walls covered in grime, flickering bulbs that buzzed weakly against the dark. He pushed through a half-open metal door, the hinges screaming. Inside, the air was heavy with oil and decay. Each step crunched over glass and gravel. The faint smell of damp concrete mixed with something far worse. Fear. He swept the flashlight across the floor. The beam caught a flash of color. A small pink shoe. Then another. A tattered teddy bear. Crayon drawings taped to the wall. their corners yellowed with age. Stick figures holding hands beneath the words, "We'll go home soon." Daniel's chest tightened. He wasn't just chasing kidnappers. This was a graveyard of lost childhoods. A low growl snapped him back. Rex's voice again, closer this time, deeper, urgent. Daniel ran. His boots pounded the floor, echoing through the maze of corridors. He turned a corner and froze. The boy was there, trapped behind a steel gate, clutching the bars with bloodied fingers. His face lit up when he saw Daniel. "You came!" A man stood beside him, tall, rough, his arm bandaged. The same insignia from the farmhouse hung around his neck. "Well, well," the man sneered, stepping forward. The hero cop finally shows up. Daniel raised his gun. "Step away from him!" The man smirked. "You don't get it, do you? This place runs deeper than one case. You shut one door. We open 10 more. Last warning!" Daniel barked. The man laughed, pulling a blade from his belt. "Then come take him!" He lunged. Rex shot out from the shadows like lightning, teeth sinking into the man's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. The man screamed, slamming Rex against a crate. Daniel dove forward, tackling him hard. They crashed into a pile of chains and splintered wood. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but adrenaline kept him moving. The man grabbed a loose chain and swung it wildly. Daniel ducked, feeling it whistle past his face. He countered with a hard punch to the jaw. Once, twice, until the man stumbled. Rex bit down again, dragging the man to the ground. "Rex, hold!" Daniel yelled, wrenching the keys from the man's pocket. He rushed to the steel gate. His hands shook as he jammed the key into the lock. The boy was crying now, voice breaking. "They said you wouldn't come back." "I'm here," Daniel said, twisting the lock open. "I promised, didn't I?" The gate swung wide. The boy rushed into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "Where are the others?" Daniel asked urgently. The boy pointed toward a far wall, a plain sheet of metal bolted into concrete. Behind there, Daniel's blood ran cold. He kicked aside crates, revealing seams in the wall, a false panel. He tore it open with his crowbar. Behind it, faces, small, terrified faces, blinking against the light. 3, maybe 4 children huddled together in a narrow chamber, their wrists bound, their clothes filthy. "It's okay," Daniel said softly, voice trembling. "You're safe now. You're going home." He turned to call it in. But the distant growl of engines roared to life. The traffickers. They were fleeing. "Rex, go!" Daniel shouted. The dog sprinted toward the exit, barking furiously. Daniel's radio crackled. "Hart, we've got your signal. Units closing in from the north side." "Copy," he shouted back. "Multiple hostiles escaping east. Children secured inside Building 12. Sirens wailed outside, a rising storm of justice. Blue and red lights flickered through broken windows. Gunshots cracked in the distance. The warehouse shook as doors slammed. Boots thundered. Men shouted. Daniel herded the children toward the exit. "Stay close to me. Don't look back." The boy gripped his sleeve tightly. "You're bleeding," he whispered. Daniel glanced down. A cut across his arm, bleeding through his sleeve. He smiled faintly. "I've had worse." They burst through the door into the night air. Police cruisers surrounded the yard, lights flashing. Officers rushed in, shouting commands, covering exits. Daniel handed the boy to a medic. "He's priority. Get them all warm, fed, and safe." The boy grabbed his hand before being led away. "You came," he whispered again. Daniel's throat tightened. "Always." He turned back toward the warehouse. The adrenaline still burned in his veins. Something gnawed at him. Unfinished. He re-entered the building, flashlights sweeping through the wreckage. The place was silent now, except for the distant hum of radios. Then, as he passed the far end of the corridor, he saw it. A narrow door hidden behind a wall of crates. half buried in dust, padlocked. Daniel frowned. No mention of a lower chamber. He leaned closer. That's when he heard it. Knocking. Faint. Slow. From the other side of the door. He froze, pulse racing. Then, another knock, and a whisper, barely audible through the metal. Please, don't leave me here. Daniel's flashlight shook in his hand. Dear God, he shouted toward the hall. I need a crowbar, now! But the noise of sirens drowned his voice. The knocking came again, weaker this time, fading. Daniel pressed his palm to the cold steel. Hold on, I'm coming. The last frame held on his face, determination burning through exhaustion, as if he'd just realized the nightmare wasn't over. The air inside the warehouse hung thick with silence, the kind that pressed on Daniel's chest and made every heartbeat sound too loud. His flashlight beam trembled slightly as he approached the hidden door again. The metal surface was cold, damp, and streaked with rust. Then, there it was. Knock. Soft. Weak. But real. Daniel swallowed hard. Hold on, he whispered, gripping the crowbar tighter. I'm here. He jammed it into the crack near the lock and pulled with everything he had. The steel shrieked in protest. Sweat rolled down his temple. One more pull, the hinge snapped free. The door groaned open. A rush of stale air hit him, thick with dust and old fear. He raised the flashlight. The beam cut across a small concrete room no bigger than a closet. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Children smiling, playing, school portraits, birthday snapshots, faces of the missing, every one of them taped carefully in rows. Daniel's stomach twisted. My God. Then his light stopped on something in the middle of the room. A girl, maybe 9 years old, lay curled on a thin mattress, pale, motionless. Her small hand dangled off the side, fingers twitching slightly. Daniel rushed to her side, checking her pulse. It was faint, but there. She's alive! He shouted over his shoulder. Medic! I need medics in here, now! The boy appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, breath trembling. When his gaze fell on the girl, he froze. He whispered, barely audible. That's her! Daniel turned, confused. Who? Tears streaked the boy's dirt-stained cheeks. That's my sister. For a second, the room seemed to stop breathing. Rex padded forward quietly, sniffed the girl's hand, then licked it gently, whining. The boy dropped to his knees beside her, clutching her small hand between his own. Wake up, he begged. Please wake up. I told you I'd find you. Daniel blinked hard, forcing his focus. Stay with her. She's breathing. He pressed his radio. This is Officer Hart. I have a live victim. Female, approximately 9 years old, unconscious but responsive. Multiple other victims confirmed safe. Request immediate medical evac. Copy that, Hart. EMTs en route, the dispatcher replied, voice steady through the static. Daniel turned his light back to the walls. The photos shimmered in the beam like ghosts, but beneath them, he noticed something else. A ledger, pinned beside the photos, its cover stamped with initials he didn't recognize. He flipped it open. Rows of handwritten entries. Dates, payment amounts, initials, DM, KL, JT, followed by company logos, government seals, and account numbers. Daniel's throat went dry. These weren't street criminals. These were people with power, he muttered, almost to himself. This goes all the way up. Behind him, the medics rushed in, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. They carefully lifted the girl onto a stretcher. The boy refused to let go of her hand, walking beside them as they carried her out. Rex stayed close, tail low, eyes tracking every shadow. Daniel followed them to the doorway, but something made him turn back. A strange pull, like unfinished business whispering in the dark. He walked to the far corner where a desk sat half collapsed. Papers scattered everywhere. On one of them, He saw a child's handwriting. "Please find us before they take me too." He closed his eyes, jaw tight. Outside, the night was alive with flashing red and blue. Officers moved between vehicles, ushering the freed children toward waiting ambulances. The boy's sister lay wrapped in a blanket, an oxygen mask over her face. Her pulse had strengthened. Daniel knelt beside them. "She's going to make it," he said softly. The boy looked up at him, eyes still wet, but glowing with something new. "You came," he whispered again. "You really came?" Daniel smiled faintly, brushing the boy's shoulder. "You were the brave one. You never stopped believing." For the first time since this began, the child smiled, small, fragile, but real. As medics lifted the girl into the ambulance, Daniel turned toward his partner, approaching through the flashing lights. Detective Ruiz's face was pale as he handed over a folder. "You should see this," Ruiz said grimly. "Those initials in the ledger, they match names from our own task force reports. Judges, executives, people we're not supposed to touch." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then we're touching them," Ruiz exhaled. "This could ruin careers. And yours, too." Daniel looked back at the ambulance pulling away, the boy's face framed in the rear window, watching him with silent gratitude. He turned back to Ruiz, voice low but steady. "Some careers deserve to end." Lightning flashed in the distance, cutting across the skyline. Rain began to fall again. Slow, deliberate drops, hitting the pavement like a heartbeat. Daniel stared at the warehouse one last time. The door he'd pried open stood ajar, swaying in the wind. Behind it, the wall of photos seemed to watch him, hundreds of small faces waiting for justice. He holstered his weapon, water running down his face, mixing with sweat and exhaustion. Then he said quietly, "We just opened the wrong door first." Ruiz frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel looked up, eyes burning with resolve. "The real monster," he said, "is still out there." The world had moved on, but Daniel hadn't. It had been 6 weeks since the warehouse raid. The investigation that followed had ripped through the town like a storm. Judges, businessmen, even a decorated police official, all implicated in a trafficking ring that had lived in plain sight for years. Every night, Daniel still heard the echoes, the faint knocks, the boy's trembling voice, the dog's growl in the dark. But today was different. Today, there was light. The hospital's children's ward was bright and filled with laughter. Real laughter this time. The boy's sister sat propped up in bed, her hair brushed neatly, her small hands painting clumsy flowers on a canvas. The boy sat beside her, quiet but smiling, as Rex lay curled at their feet. When Daniel entered, Rex's ears perked instantly, tail thumping against the floor. "Hey, buddy," Daniel murmured, kneeling to scratch behind the dog's ear. "You've been keeping them safe, huh?" The boy grinned shyly. He'd started to speak again, little by little, but words still came hard. Instead, he pointed to a drawing on the bedside table, a stick-figure version of Rex wearing a police badge. Daniel chuckled. "Looks just like him," the nurse nearby smiled. "They've been inseparable since you brought Rex over. He sleeps under their bed every night." "Yeah," Daniel said softly. "He's got good instincts." The boy's sister looked up. "Mom says we might get to keep him, just until we find a new house." Daniel hesitated, but nodded. "I think he'd like that." Rex wagged his tail in agreement, pressing his nose into the boy's palm. Outside the hospital, the world was calling it the K9 that exposed a hidden network. Every major paper had the same photo. Daniel in uniform, kneeling beside Rex, surrounded by the rescued children. But Daniel hated the spotlight. He knew the real story wasn't about him. It was about a boy who'd found the courage to trust again, and a dog who listened when no one else did. Weeks later, the courtroom was silent as Daniel took the stand. He recounted the night in the woods, the backpack, the drawings, the hidden door. His voice stayed even, but his hands clenched the railing until his knuckles went white. When the defense tried to twist his account, Daniel's reply was simple. I didn't follow a hunch. I followed a child's cry for help. The jury didn't need to deliberate long. The verdict came swift. Guilty on all counts. When it was over, Daniel stepped outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing. He said nothing, just scratched Rex behind the ear and kept walking. The world, however, didn't stay quiet. A few weeks later, a local school started something new. The Silent Signal Program. It taught children how to ask for help without words. Simple signs, symbols, and signals that could alert teachers, police, or anyone nearby if they were in danger. At the dedication ceremony, Daniel stood off to the side in plain clothes, watching as the boy and his sister cut the ribbon together. The banner above them read, "In honor of the boy who spoke without words, and the dog who heard him." Parents clapped. Kids cheered. Rex barked happily, tail wagging, as the boy hugged his neck tightly. Daniel smiled, his throat tight. Later that evening, Daniel stopped by their foster home. The house was small but warm. Laughter spilling from the kitchen, drawings taped to every wall. The boy ran to greet him, barefoot, clutching something in his hand. "For me?" Daniel asked. The boy nodded, handing him a folded sheet of paper. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing, crude, colorful, and perfect. 3 figures stood beneath a bright sun: Daniel, Rex, and a group of smiling children. Above them, in uneven letters, were the words, "You heard me when no one else did." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He knelt down, looking the boy in the eyes. "You're the bravest kid I've ever met," he said softly. "Never forget that." The boy smiled shyly, then hugged him, tight and wordless. Rex barked once, as if agreeing. When Daniel left, the sun was setting, the sky painted with streaks of gold and violet. He walked slowly toward his truck, the drawing still in his hand. He paused before folding it, looking at the words again. "You heard me when no one else did." For the first time in a long time, Daniel let himself breathe. The world still had monsters, but it also had heroes, some with badges, some with paws, some with hearts too quiet to notice at first glance. He looked down at Rex, who trotted beside him, loyal as ever. "Come on, partner," he said softly. "Let's go home." As the truck pulled away, the boy stood by the window, waving. The dog barked once in return, a promise that no signal, no whisper, no cry would ever go unheard again, because sometimes heroes don't roar, sometimes they listen, and sometimes courage is silent, but it saves lives. If this story touched your heart, share it. You never know. One small signal might save another life.